Kia ora koutou, ko Victoria McLennan toko ingoa, and welcome to this IT Professionals Te Pō Hangarau Naio's Fireside Chat for the first one for 2024 on the 6th of March. I'm really excited to be joined today by one of my favourite people in the whole world, who is Emily Blythe, and I've been trying to get her to join me for one of these chats for a while. So kia ora, Emily.
Kia ora, Vic. Yeah, really excited to be here too.
It's awesome. So for everyone who is watching this, we are going to have a very informal chat. We know each other pretty well. We'll explain that shortly and talk about life as an entrepreneur and talk quite a bit about the role of mentoring and your development as an entrepreneur. But if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask of Emily, please ask them via the Q&A function and I can relay them to her as we go. So feel free to ask away, ask your questions. So Emily, to start, we once owned a business together and I thought we should start by talking about that. And that was your first business, which was called Flatpack, and you started that while you were at high school. And I'm dying to know now, and after all of the other things that you've done, would you start a business at high school again if you could do it all again?
Yes, definitely. I think Flatpack was definitely one of the best learning opportunities we had. I started it through the Young Enterprise Scheme, year 12 in high school, and that was an amazing opportunity to really learn the basics of business, and then to be able to pull that out of the Young Enterprise Scheme and into the real world, working with yourself and with Mike, and it's those sort of learnings you don't get through your studies. And I still remember now being encouraged by the two of you to go and pitch. Do you remember when we did the big trip around all of the farmland stores in New Zealand and hand delivered the bags into the stores, presented to every single customer that they had, and rep on the ground floor there, and built up those relationships that way, and harness tweeting.
And we got our product into the farmland stores around the country as a result, which was great.
Yeah. And secured all of our accommodation on the way with local farmers through Twitter.
So what you're doing now is quite a long way away from physical things for quad bikes, and now you're working in the aviation business. So tell us a tiny bit about how you got the idea for Piper Vision. How did you the genesis of your new enterprise?
Yeah, so Piper was really a reflection on a problem I was exposed to quite a lot growing up. So my mum's an air traffic controller. My granddad taught me how to fly when I was younger, and I had this awesome opportunity as a kid to see how quickly an airport would shut down when fog was formed, and how many people across that supply chain were impacted. And so I think it was a problem I started thinking about back during Young Enterprise sort of timeline, when we're being challenged to solve big problems. And it was one that I never really forgot. It's something that no one's ever done successfully and commercialized. And so that was really appealing too. And I knew it was one that we could make a really big impact on, giving that visibility back, and then therefore enabling everyone from the pilot to the air traffic controller to construction workers on the airport to do their job on time, every time.
Cool. Really great notion. And I guess you see that come to play in different parts of the world quite differently than here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, where we don't have as bigger airports or as many people travelling through. So there's a massive global opportunity for the business, and I wish you all the luck in the world with that. But what I do want to ask you is a really tricky question, which is, do you think we do enough as a country to encourage and support entrepreneurship?
So it's a good question, because I think there's always an opportunity to do more. And I think we've got some things that are more challenging in New Zealand and some things that are give us a bit more of an advantage. And so I think if we start on the advantage piece, I think community's like extremely strong. You can reach out to anyone you want to. In New Zealand, you can generally get a response back. There's this awesome sort of drive, and especially I'm like finding this heaps in the aerospace sector for this, opportunity to collaborate, to reduce costs together, to make world first, to kind of lead the pathway and work out how you can kind of piece the problem together. And so I think that's one thing that New Zealand does extremely well, and it gives a massive benefit to the entire ecosystem is we're really good at working well together, and that gives us a number of advantages too. I think where we've got some challenges, funding's obviously a big one. We're in a small country. The grant sizes here aren't huge. Same with the investment opportunity, and really there seems to be this really strong drive for, if you raise investment, you want to take sort of 20 to 25% of your business. And so that kind of sets your valuation. You've got 2 to 3 rounds to get into market fit. And whilst it works for some companies, it's really challenging for those with longer lead times too. So it forces you really to start thinking outside of the box. And I think too, I was reflecting because we've recently seen a switch in grant funding from sort of R&D led to there's that slight change now into a bit more commercialization funding, which is awesome, and it's going to really benefit the likes of Piper Vision. But it's also just making me wonder how many of those others are we dropping companies now by not pushing them through that pipeline. And as a country, I'd like to see how we can better support a little bit more around sort of every stage of that pipeline, and in particular around commercialization, because we've got some brilliant ideas coming out of here, but not a heap of them make it into market.
I think that's really good to hear that there's some funding going in the direction of commercialization. The point you made about the pattern, I guess, for want of a better word that our model kind of forces you into, that cookie cutter model doesn't work for everyone. It's fine if you're software as a service, single product, single market, aiming for the hockey stick kind of growth. That works well there, but then there's so many other types of businesses that kind of model doesn't work for. So I just wonder whether it's a maturity thing here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, because we've been bootstrapping our businesses for such a long time.
It's an
does that resonate with you?
It does. And there's also, I struggle a lot with the cultural shift so in New Zealand, I'm finding there's an enormous power at the moment in transparency with our investors, right? And I get a lot of feedback back on, thank you for being fully transparent with us, for your authenticity, that sort of thing. But as soon as you go with those same lot of comms to someone overseas to raise investment, all of a sudden you're not ambitious enough. You're not, dreaming big enough. And so there's a fun balance on how can we actually position ourselves as a country to enable that growth, knowing that our funding is capped, to actually help kind of transition these companies abroad as well.
I remember that the first time I went to the States and just these fast transactional meetings, and someone said to me, you've got to kick the Kiwi out of you. You've got to learn how to engage in that environment because it is so different. And we're used to storytelling and establishing relationships over time. So, I do remember that really clearly. And how do we better prepare entrepreneurs for the different markets and the different ways they engage? It's really good food for thought for all of us to think about. I'm going to change the subject now.
Oh, good.
Now, something I know you don't love talking about, which is yourself, but we might as well talk about that amazing award you won last year. And for those who don't know, Emily won the Kiwibank Entrepreneur of the Year award last year. It was all televised. Looks like it was a massive showcase kind of event. It was fantastic. How did you feel when you won?
It was. I do struggle to put words to the feeling because it was really surreal. And I think as an entrepreneur, you kind of get into this habit of like you're reaching for the next big thing and the next big thing and the next big thing, and you kind of loop and you forget to stop and celebrate. And that event really kind of forced a little bit of a spotlight on that piece, and actually how far have I come, and what have we achieved, and it's a really, I don't know, it's an uncomfortable feeling. I don't like having the spotlight on me. I'd much rather run 100 miles in the other direction, but at the same time it was a really awesome opportunity to stop and reflect on some of those points, and celebrate them too with the whole team.
And I have to say, I'm sharing this with an open audience now, but you're amazing at that. I remember when I was up for the High Tech Awards one year, the Inspiring Individual one, and there you were, you turned up with a big bunch of flowers and and just, celebrating the fact that I was a finalist and going to Auckland and being in the same space. That was just fantastic. And so you're very good at celebrating for other people, but it's a great reflection that you need to do the same for yourself as well sometimes.
I still don't know too who put my name forward, but thank you to whoever that was.
I'm sure we could come up with a list of people, or maybe it was a bit of a collaboration. So would you encourage other people to enter awards like this? And can you talk a little bit about, has it helped you with opening those doors or the recognition that you've had as a result?
Yeah. It feels silly in a way that it can help, but it definitely does. Like having having that recognition has helped to kind of, I guess, lift my own profile and help build a community around there. I think it's important too to be able to show for the younger generation what they can aspire to, and to build that pipeline as well. And so it aligned there as well. I wish we could get that like sort of recognition from just doing a good job within our own business. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely think there's a balance, right? And I think I think it's something phenomenal that you can share and actually celebrate with your team and force yourself to stop. And so I think taking the time to do that, to make sure that everyone does recognise, what they have achieved alongside the journey, is important.
Okay, good words of encouragement and advice there. Thank you. Now, the main thing I wanted to talk to you about today was mentoring, because I know it's played such a big role in your journey, because you started, as you said, a young entrepreneur, year 12, and you when you start out like that, you don't know what you don't know. So it's really important to have great mentors. And I know that you've had some really good mentors in your journey. So can you tell us a bit about the difference they've made in your experience as a businesswoman for you and the way that you've developed and grown?
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit around you don't know what you don't know too. And that's one really big piece that has come through with each of the mentors that I've onboarded. And, the best ones will kind of hold the mirror back at you sometimes, even when it's uncomfortable, and help you to spot both your weaknesses but also your strengths so that you can lean into those. I've always believed that you grow your ideas or your capabilities or whatnot through sharing them with others. There's no point kind of locking it in a room and protecting it. And so my mentors have been just an awesome sort of bounce board along the way. They've also been some of the best connections. My chairman was introduced to me through one of my mentors over in San Francisco that was like a friend of a friend, and he's just been phenomenal. My COO, who's like my right-hand man, was another connection through one of my mentors, and she was able to spot how I worked, which was sort of, I guess, a little bit more gut feel based, and what the business needed, which was a lot more database decision making, and she brought that in through him, and that was a gap that I didn't see, but it's one now that is serving Piper in an extraordinary way. And I also think too, just helping me to operate, I guess I wrote in my authenticity, but I'm trying to think the right word. I think there's so many, you kind of read everything you see in the media is like the glossy version of other people, and it's really tempting starting out to try and make yourself fit in the square box of what you think other people are doing or seeing or being. And I think one of the best powers that I've got, something you drove into me from the early days and has continued, over time, it's kind of just that encouragement to do it yourself and to do it your way, and that there's no right way. And when you can stand and do things that are in a way that are fully aligned to your values, I think you can operate from a much stronger base too.
Yeah, and really understanding what your core value base is so important, isn't it? I remember in that an early program you were in called Venture Up, running a workshop for a whole lot of people about learning who to take advice from.
Oh yeah.
Because it could, your parents have the best intentions, but they don't necessarily understand the product or the market that you're going for, or your cousin or your neighbour or whoever, and that skill of learning who to take advice from when is such a difficult one, isn't it, at a young age?
Yeah. And also to have the courage to, I think there's some things over time, right, which are like data-backed decisions, and there's some things where you kind of need to just listen to your gut. And so having someone who can kind of bounce board and distinguish between sort of I guess the emotions of trying to make the right decision, and back you in as well is I think you can be a little bit braver. You've got that around.
That's really good to hear. Now, for everyone who's listening to this live, you're welcome to ask questions of Emily. You can pop them in the Q&A and I will carry those questions to her. But in the meantime, I'll carry on with my questions. So thinking about some of the mentors that you've had for all these different reasons, which is fantastic to hear the different people and different characteristics of them for different purposes. What are some of the characteristics of the best mentors that you've had over the years? And I'm asking that question in case anyone here is listening, they're thinking about becoming a mentor. What could they learn from your mentors that are great characteristics?
Yeah, I think one key thing is not doing the work for me, but encouraging me to give it a go. And I still remember being put on the spot on quite a few occasions early on. One scenario was at Te Hono, which is the agricultural conference, and the Prime Minister at the time was presenting, and I'd gone along with one of my mentors, Rachel, and he finished and asked if there was any questions, and no one put their hand up. She put her hand up and said, Emily's got a question for you. And forced me to come up with it on the spot. But I think it was almost like that, just the learning of there's no such thing as being wrong, just give it a go, and kind of having the opportunity to have a little bit of support alongside, but actually just learn through doing it yourself. The house isn't going to catch on fire if you give it a go. So that was one really big one. And I've definitely learned the most from those who've been able to position me in a way where I can give something new a try without them kind of writing out a full road book. That's something I'm wanting to learn to do myself for others.
Because you're asking this person to give up their time and their experience to support you in your journey. So the important thing is that they're supporting you in your journey, not telling you how to do your journey, isn't it?
Yeah. And giving that really honest and direct feedback. And I think if you can have that really strong base of trust too, there's been a few things that people have said to me over my lifetime that have been really hard to hear, but because we had that trust, and I knew it was something I didn't want to hear, that it was coming from the right place, and that person would only be speaking up to if they wanted to get that message through. So tuning in on those things too, and keeping a good relationship.
Yeah, because Team Emily is a pretty big team of fabulous people. Yeah. You've amassed some great people around you. So if anyone who's listening to this is considering finding a mentor, do you have any advice for them on how to go about finding mentors for different purposes, or finding someone, or taking that first step, approaching someone and asking?
Yeah. I think I kind of want to give two different directions or two different approaches for this. Like, one is, sit down and have a think about, like, what's the skill set that you're missing, or what's the piece where you want some guidance or some bounce board, and get really clear on that, but also be really clear around how you work and what's the piece missing from that. And so, like, I found like that engagement piece of having someone, like having a place of mutual respect and being able to listen and bounce off each other is really important in that relationship. So just, like, I guess, getting really clear on like, how do you communicate, and what are your needs in terms of skills or guidance, and then spending some time in actually understanding who's the best. Like, I always like to think around, like, who's the best person to do this for me? Who do I look up to? Who don't mind? Like, who's gone and done this thing before? And then either finding a mutual connection or reaching out to them, and just making sure that you are being wary that it's their time that you're going to use up too. So coming prepared with questions, making sure you follow up after each meeting, finding ways in which you can kind of, I don't like just build a meaningful relationship. So I think there's a lot of people that ask for coffee meetings or something. So if you can find some way of making a difference, or reaching out in a different way, or at least showing them that their feedback's going to good use. And then I think the second one too is just more of a gut feel. Like, I think some of the best mentors I've had, I wasn't searching for them at the time, but when I met them, I could, like, kind of feel or notice that they were bringing me something I didn't know that I needed or had. And so just following up and kind of following that line of curiosity to see how you fill that gap.
And one thing you do really well, Emily, is you do follow up and you thank people for their time, and you also bring baked goods to meetings. And so I think I'd say to anyone who's looking for that advice, take a leaf out of Emily's book and be a grateful mentee, I guess. And I know that now you're more experienced and you're kind of turning the tables now, and you're starting to get a little bit involved in some mentoring yourself. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I had an awesome opportunity recently. I was approached by Ministry of Awesome that are running a mentoring program, and one I went through a few years ago. And they're looking for mentors for early stage companies that are looking for sort of that product market fit stage, and either preparing for a raise or preparing to kind of launch a product into market. And so I've helped out with some of the judging there, and now get the chance to kind of mentor one-on-one with 3 of the teams coming through. But it's been phenomenal to see the caliber coming through of companies. It's just amazing. Gets me really excited with what's building up locally here in Christchurch. It feels like Christchurch is finally kind of becoming a little bit of a startup hub. Don't let me leave my home. Yeah. And hopefully I can give something back that's a bit meaningful too along the way.
Yeah, well, there's so much to learn, right? When you're right at the beginning of developing your product or your service or your company, and there's just so many different quadrants you need to learn about, eh? It's like, it's not just the product you're passionate about, it's employing staff and signing contracts and raising money and marketing, and all of this. I'm preaching to the converted here. Do you think that do you think if someone had said to you before that young enterprise thing, or even while you were going through that and had the idea about Flatpack, if someone had said to you, going into this life, it's so complex and you're going to have all these highs and all these lows and things will go wrong, and you would have run for the hills, or do you think you would have still done it?
I don't think I would have believed them, to be honest. I think you're so well trained early on that it's like, you do this, you get that, you do this, you get that. And I can't think of any other part of like my early life that gave me the same ride of, my God, what's going to happen next? Yes, I don't think I would have believed them, but equally, I don't think like there's not a real drive. Like going through high school, you kind of think like you've got to go to uni, get an early job, get a trade, and it was awesome to be able to be exposed to this part of the world that, you had no other exposure to through the Young Enterprise Scheme. But there's still not enough pushing for it as a career straight out of high school. I think a lot of students go I love doing that business course or that sort of thing, but I need a degree before I can start a business, or I need, X, fill in the gap. And just knowing that, really you can learn all the lessons on the way.
Yeah. And it is interesting. I'd agree with that observation. I often meet people who come to me with their perfectly formed business plan that they've been writing for the last 20 years, but they haven't been brave enough to take the leap. And it's kind of, when do you take that leap? When's it going to be right for you? And for you, Emily, that was right for you straight out of high school. But for other people, it's not right for them until they've got some personal security or a house to put on the line when they're raising capital, or and it's quite interesting how some people that I meet and you might meet in your future, you can just tell when you meet them, they're never going to take that step. They're never going to take that leap of faith to back themselves and go, I'm going to run my own thing and I'm going to put it all on the line in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the hardest things about business too, because you need that time, right, to get to a point where you've got stable living. Yeah, I don't think there's any easy way.
No, there's no easy answer. But interesting, you said you don't think you would have believed it if someone had told you what the roller coaster ride was going to be like. And I guess it is something that you can't really conceive of until you've been through those high highs and those low lows. It's really impossible to imagine what that's like when you're a person who goes to a job where the money turns up every day and you've got certainty and you can stop working at 5 o'clock and you don't need to get that board paper out in the next 6 hours or investor pitch or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time and it's been great chatting with you. I am going to ask you just a couple of final questions. On that high highs, low lows kind of line of thinking, I know you're very good at taking time out for yourself, that you do yoga or you read a good book. Do you have any insights to share on the importance of being mindful and actually taking that time out, and how you've had to, I perceive, had to learn to do that, and how important that can be for reinvigorating yourself, I guess?
Yeah. I think when I first started as an entrepreneur and had this you've got this I don't know, it just feels like the norm's go, 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 right? And that's it's almost exhilarating and addictive to, be able to be extra productive and get caught into a problem and solve it. And it's a zone that I love to be in and want to be in. And so when I think as an entrepreneur, when you initially told to make sure you've got some life balance, and we're seeing and hearing a little bit more of this now, but it's still probably not at the extent of where it needs to be. the initial thought is you need that for you because you're not, you're human, you're not a robot, you can't just keep going. And I think that's true too. But there's also, I guess there's a little magic that I didn't expect in taking time out that showed up for me too. So I had a bit of time off a couple of years ago and took a really big step back. And it was really interesting being out of that sort of cycle of rinse and repeat of like problem solving and getting things out the door and that sort of thing, and the actual in stopping. You had like, I found my curiosity came back a little bit more, and I was able to spot things because I had a bit more space to spot and come up with ideas than when you're just doing. And the power in that, right? Because in an entrepreneur and doing a business, you're doing stuff that's never been done before. So that is extremely valuable. And so I think for me, consciously noting that that's the piece that I need to bring Piper has been the bit that's allowed me to kind of go, actually, it's okay to take time out. I know it sounds silly because it is okay, but that was kind of what allowed me to process it and take that time out. And so now I've got a fairly strong regime in place. I tend to, in the mornings I get up and I do morning pages first thing in the morning, and it's just sort of 3 pages of handwriting and whatever kind of comes out. And the idea is it's just getting all that shit in the back chatter and stuff out of your head straight away. And it's been really interesting over the last 2 years of doing that, watching it go from like really negative to really positive over time too. And now I'm at a stage where I'm like, I'll be writing about stuff, but I'll be almost problem solving things that are coming up through that process. So I find a lot of power in doing those morning pages. I try and get to at least 3 yoga sessions every week. Otherwise, get really sore back working. And that is also one of the only times that I can kind of quiet my mind down and I'm not actively thinking. I don't get that from anything else. And then the other thing I've had to be really disciplined on lately, and this is a habit that slips quite often and I have to come back, is sitting down to eat my meals and not just eating on the go. But I notice just having, even if it's 15 minutes, sitting and eating and not working at the same time brings in little pieces of insight too. So doing those and not working through the weekends now, actually having weekends and using them to kind of create a little bit more space and invite in creativity.
That's great advice and great reflection. The other thing that I think time out gives me is that I come back from a holiday with energy that I need to help carry the team and everyone else through as well, because we don't all take holidays at the same time necessarily. And so everyone's ebbs and flows are different. And so coming back reinvigorated is really good for the team as well as for the organisation and your purpose as you've described. And I always have epiphanies when I'm on a holiday. I don't know about you, but
it's amazing that some of the biggest jumps I've had is just been outside of work. Really.
Yeah, just unintended. But great advice about writing it all down and getting stuff out, and great advice about doing mindful things that ensure that you're switching your brain off, and also not working the weekends. I'm thrilled to hear that you've made that change.
Big change, yep.
Hey, well, thank you so much for your time today, Emily. Really, really appreciate it. This has been really useful. This recording will be available in the next couple of days, and I'll go out in my pānui on Friday for anyone who couldn't join us live and can watch it and hear all your wonderful wisdom. And for everyone who's joined us today, thank you so much for joining. It's been quite a pleasure to talk to Emily. I hope you all got as much out of it as I did. And I'll say goodbye to everyone and end the webinar now. So, tā kite.